The drums were so loud on Eunice 1, the crowd so alive and vital. The world had always been kind to humans. To us, I should say. The young ones were healthy, happy, well-educated, proud and fierce. The elders were respected, honored and trusted, as it should be, as I wish it were on all worlds. My ship houses a statue saved from the world. It depicts two members of the Guard, standing back to back, fighting against the dark and the horrors of this galaxy. I say saved, because it was saved before the world was lost. My brothers and I were tracking a band of traitor Marines, belonging to the World Eaters.
It had been a very long time that my brothers and I had followed a small band of World Eaters. This particular band of breakaways were more mindless than most of Angron's butchers. None of the World Eaters employed guile, strategy, or subtlety, but these select few were less willing than most. They were convinced that they, and they alone, had been chosen by Khorne to kill the Emperor. One of the number had seen the message in the spilled entrails of an Imperial Guard soldier.
Little did we know that in following them, we would end up in a very, very different war. Angron's skeletal bloodbags aren't terribly fond of acting in a subtle manner. They have no guile, and very little tactical acumen to speak of. So, they will go where they think they can spill the most blood. Or, raise the most hell, as the old Terranborn would say. On the 54th day of following the cluster of Bloodfools, we engaged them above a small, defunct planet that had been abandoned by the Imperium. For reasons unknown to us, they decided to land on the world.
We wanted to see what would happen when you maroon 100 blood-crazed murderers on a rock. We sabotaged their ship, a floating, rusted hull they unironically called Blood Drinker. The engines flew out above an abandoned, desolate world, and they were forced to land with all hands. It is very amusing indeed to sit in low orbit and watch as a dozen axe-wielding maniacs hack each other to shreds. Trust me, a terrible betrayal.
During the ensuing carnage, we received a waylaid Vox message requesting assistance. The message had come from Eunice. We disengaged after we hobbled the World Eaters. When we arrived on Eunice, we found a near-paradise world. Our contact was, as it always is, limited. General Oliver Stephan Bale informed us there had been unusual events on the streets of the world's capital. And what a city it was. Twin Suns.
The global capital, Twin Suns, had been the victim of phantoms in the night, kidnappings and haunting. That is something worth looking into, believe me. So we donned the mantle of the Frost Wolves and opened comms with that proud general. We explained that we'd be en route to Eunice 1 as soon as our jets could carry us there.
A wonder city. A hive that made all other hives seem like filth-caked cesspools. 3 of us landed in the dead of night and met with General Olivus to discuss these events. Shadows had been seen moving without anyone to cast them. Phantoms had wailed in the night. People had gone missing or vanished in broad daylight on the crowded streets.
It is at this point in this tale that along comes a snake, the Drukhari. Many years before the Blood Worshippers had decided to launch their campaign of self-genocide, we had reached a cautious agreement with those perfumed, preening monsters. They would locate certain objects of interest to us. They would be free to do so however they pleased, indulging whatever desires they wished. Why would we care if they poison themselves while working for us? Brother, as new sword told as he whispered, Drukhari. He was correct.
Of course. Who else would vanish citizens? Who else would project wraiths and ghosts? Who else would use fear as a weapon so effectively? Other than us, of course. It turns out that beneath the city, the Drukhari had slowly but surely been building a sub-city, an underground world of tortured towns and pleasure palaces.
It was obvious that this band of raiders had ignored our requests, abandoned their search for the requested items, and simply given in to their base desires. So, they would learn fear. General Aldous was all too happy to offer himself and his legion of Imperial Guard, called the Starborn. He believed that he was about to engage in a righteous crusade of purging Xenos alongside the mighty wolves of Fenris. He couldn't believe his luck. We were all too happy to bark and howl and swear and drink like the sons of Rush. Such basic souls are easily copied. We, of course, knew the plan.
We informed General Alpharius of our suspicions, and suggest that we, and his troops, investigate. He insisted that as it was his city, that he and his men lead the way forward. Fine by us. Lead from the rear, as our father was so fond of saying. The soldiers of the Eunice Imperial Guard were known as the Starborn, tenacious, despite lacking the internal hardware needed for true tenacity.
It is here that I must mention one important fact. The hauntings, the sightings of phantoms and shades, they were not the acts of the elves. The elves had found something that they thought was powerful enough to dissuade us Marines from pursuing them. The phantasms were projections made by ancient Necron early warning systems. The Eldar were hired to track down the location of a certain gate of Necron origin, and they had succeeded in a fairly grand fashion. One of the Proto-Gate twins was buried beneath Eunice 1, and it was through this gate that the Eldar were traveling.
They had found the gate's twin on a small, desolate world, roughly 5 light-years to the galactic north of Eunice. The gate glowed, that fierce, almost conscious green glow that so many now recognize. Their continued use of the gate, their pillaging of technology, and their general arrogance had awoken something far, far worse than themselves. Eunice was in a good galactic location. Many species would kill to inhabit it.
As the sun rose over twin suns, the noble wolves and the proud Starborn began a campaign of extermination against the vermin infesting the city. We, of course, witnessed many accidents. How many Imperial Guardsmen died to traps or ambushes? What a shame. And how many Drukhari Corsairs simply vanished before they could be questioned? Who knows? Well, I know, but you see my point. As time ground on, we began to find more and more already dead elves. Some had been skinned, and in their typical efficient fashion as well. However, in doing so, the Necrons had confirmed one important thing. That the Necron Lord we had been searching for was indeed awake. We found more and more lingering Necron soldiers, and more of the Imperial Guard fell to their staggeringly powerful Gauss weaponry. They were of no concern to us. Each guard who engaged a Necron left a weaker Necron that we had to fight. A nice trade. The human died a valiant, proud hero, and the Necron was buried in filth beneath a world that paid them no regard. Finally, we reached the Proto-Gate, buried beneath the world. That general, all of us, could not believe his luck.
My battle brother and General Alpharius agreed to step through the gate that night. They didn't tell me, knowing I would instantly deny such a foolish idea. The guard and my brother stormed the gate. They set area denial charges on it, charges that would detonate if they hadn't returned in 24 hours. I know what you're thinking. How did I not stop them? Or even know? I was investigating the effects of the tectonic pulse when they stormed the gate. 625 members of the Eunice 1st Battalion and 24 of my fellow Astartes entered that portal. One man came out.
He got to blindly charge into the unknown and throw his life and the lives of his men away. It was as we approached the gate that I received word that the Dark Elf leader, one Prince Aurea Storm, had been captured. His lot would be cast soon, but not yet. I turned, my ice blue eyes flashing in that way that only one from Fenris would understand. Lord Alpharius, the moment is here. Our chance to cleanse this fair world has finally arrived.
Claw Leader Yorn, it has been a long campaign, but we wouldn't be here if it were not for you. How can we ever thank you and your men?
He clicked his boots together and stared into the faces of a dozen space wolves. Lord, we wolves on the earth so we may join in the final hunt. The hunt that will see the great beast finally brought down and blood dry. I howled as I spoke. My brothers joined in, barely managing to stop themselves from laughing.
He told me that they had stepped through the gate and found themselves inside a complex. A vast, lofty megastructure of black stone, or Noctilith, as we call it. A steel-faced legion of immortal machines stood before him. In front of that legion rose a figure, its necrodermis covered with gold and platinum.
Grand Vizier Apatek, the witness, began speaking, muttering about humanity. The foolish thing. Who dares enter the throne of High Lord Anateth the Dreamer?
The figure asked. The fight lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds. All of us engaged the Necron Lord in close quarters to save the life of my brother. The Necron Lord kicked all of us in the chest with enough force to send him flying back through the gate. All of us had grabbed the staff that the being held to disarm it. He flew through the gate, still holding the solid platinum staff.
He landed against me and stared into my green lenses. I took that staff from him. The artifact that the Drukhari had decided wasn't worth finding.
What? Wait. Who? Where?
He asked.
He survived, somehow, though his body was broken and his mind was scarred beyond the imagination of most mortals. He spent a year in the Medicaid units, in various therapies and receiving various treatments. He can walk now, though he needs a stick to do so.
General Alpharius still asks me.
Who are you?
During long voyages, he cannot comprehend what the staff is. The staff of the 18th Light was forged in a time before the Necron, and it is now mine.
In hallucinogenic-induced fugue states, he has told me of the beings that stood in that chamber. And worst of all, he screams as he tells me of the figure behind the standing army. A fragment of all of his mind still lives in that room. It still remembers that steel whirlpool forming into a smirking, mocking face. All of us would scream the words, "Who are you?" I pinned the medal to all of his chests myself. It's the least I could do. He travels with me, not being able to live on Eunice any longer. Who are you?
He asks, and I reply, I am Alpharius.